Hello there, and welcome to day number 7 of the grind, the road to 2000 elo in Rapid on chess.com. I am on a win streak of sorts. Yesterday's game was pretty crazy. Yesterday was a pretty crazy day for me in general. I streamed for 33 hours straight doing a subathon on Twitch, and that was a blast, but that also means I'm a little bit sleep deprived. So, I don't know if I'll be playing the best chess today, but we are going to be trying our very best, and I'm going to be trying to make the best moves every single move, because that is how we ultimately get better. So with that in mind, let's just hop into this game, shall we? Remember, if you like the videos, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. And without further ado, let's get it. What we got? We got something from Brazil, a 1674. We're actually playing up by 50 elo. It's not going to be an easy one. We're playing as black. We're playing e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and we're playing a Scotch, it looks like. Alright, so it's the Scotch Gambit. I've been meaning to learn the theory for the Scotch Gambit. I don't remember it very precisely, to be honest. I wonder what moves are possible. I'm even thinking about playing something like h6, just so that the knight can never come in onto g5. I know this isn't probably the best move, and it's a little slow, but my opponent is allowing me to have this pawn in the center. If the knight takes, I'm perfectly fine with taking back and having the queen take on d4. I should probably study the Scotch a little bit more. Next possible moves for me is probably something like bishop c5, trying to hold on to the pawn, and then something like d6. I want to be able to play d6 without blocking in my bishop. My opponent's thinking, which is a good sign. I guess h6 is not a move that my opponent expected. Castling early. We're going to go here. We're going to toss in bishop c5. And we're hanging on to this pawn now. And we're going to prepare for this move over here. Oh, okay. So they're sacking another pawn. Well, not sacking, but I'm able to win this pawn now, which I will do, I believe. If I go queen here instead, he has this move, because after knight takes, queen takes, he has rook here, so I can't do that just yet. I think I'll take, and I'll let the knight come out. We're going to... Oh, I don't understand this move. What does he see? Ah, that's nice. So he sees this. I did not notice that at all. Let's see what we can do here. I don't have to take back. If I take back, the queen develops with tempo, and that's pretty bad for me. I'm still up a pawn. Let me see. After queen takes, maybe I should take. Queen check. King e8. I don't see any follow-up checks that look dangerous, especially. I definitely don't feel like I'm doing particularly well in this position. But if I can get my king to safety... Oh, never mind. I do see a follow-up check that looks particularly dangerous. Whoopsies. Let's think about this one. So, what move can I play? Something like maybe... If I move my king to f8, what can my opponent do? Oh, I guess regardless they take with check. So that's a smart move. Maybe going e7 is better, because after takes, I have this move here, d6, and then there's going to be no more checks. This also lets me develop my bishop. So let's see. Let's see what happens. Yep. They're going to win my pawn. And I guess, well, they're not going to win my pawn yet. I can actually take here first, which is kind of nice. Oh, wait, they do win my pawn. My bad. I'm pretty tired today. There's a check here. I don't want to allow this check. We're going to just go knight f6. If here. And if the rook slides onto e1, we're just going to move our king onto f7 probably. because these ideas are pretty annoying to deal with. Let's see. That was a nice find by my opponent. I mean, I was clearly playing... Oh, wow, they go for it immediately. Okay. This I don't really see too big of a problem with. Just because it kind of helps me solve the position a tiny bit. After queen takes, I'm just going to move my king to f7. And I don't see any immediate follow-up checks, which is good. We're going to probably go queen d6 next, trying to trade off the queens. Maybe even rook e8 next, too. Would seem promising as a move. We don't want to hang this pawn on c7. Pawns would start falling apart. But after rook e8, king g8, I think we've somehow managed to be fine coming out of this. The one little caveat is that rook e8, if the bishop can take, pawn takes back, and then the queen can take the knight, that is a problem. So let's think about this one a tiny bit. My monitor is dying, but luckily I have a second monitor where I'm recording the actual video, where I'm actually able to see. So if I'm looking to a different side, that is because my monitor is somehow, for whatever reason, falling apart. Okay, this is interesting. So they're going after this pawn. Should I let that happen? I don't see any reason to let that happen. I can just play something like c6 and not allow this pawn to be taken. And so, yeah, they kind of just played a move. I mean, they develop a piece. That is never a bad thing. Perhaps I could have also gone knight d5. But knight d5 walks into, like, rook d1 ideas. Now I'm going to play rook e8, because that knight is not really making any big threats as of yet. It also takes away the knight d5 move that I wanted to play before. So, rook e8 is what I will play. He can choose to trade off the queens. He's not going to trade off the queens. If I go here, he has this bishop move that is a little annoying. But I can go here. And there's no checks still. Oh, there is one check with the queen, but that helps me develop my bishop. And hopefully we can just get the queens traded off the board. Fingers crossed. Let's see. We're equal on time, so we're doing okay. Let's see what my opponent does. Now, this is not a great start for me, but at least I've somehow managed to make it a game where it's not, you know, I'm not falling apart. This looks fairly equal as long as my king can get to safety, and as it's on a light square and my opponent doesn't have a light squared bishop, it seems like I'll be fine in the long run. I don't want to speak too soon, though. It's entirely possible that I am mistaken. Let's find out. If queen check, like I said, bishop e6 probably. And I don't see any other checks that are available for the queen. Maybe he'll choose to just trade and try to win the endgame with the doubled pawns. It's probably what I would go for, most likely. My opponent is taking their time to think, which means we have time to stretch. Always important to stretch, folks. Remember that. It can never be bad to get your muscles loose. Tension is not that great for you. Let's see. Let me think. If I was white, what would I play? It's typically a good thought exercise. Maybe something like b4 could be interesting. Because then after takes, you have this pawn that's solid on c5 and stops my pawns from pushing forward. The only annoying thing about that is that it becomes an isolated pawn and I don't have to push forward. I could just... Okay, there we go. We take. I got the impression my opponent did not want to play that move, which is always a good sign. Let's see. Let's go here. Trying to build pressure on this pawn. If this knight moves out of the way for whatever reason, although the knight doesn't really have any good squares to go to, but even if this rook goes out of the way, I could just take. Although taking, no, I can't just, can I just take? So my problem is that if rook d1, for example, bishop takes, rook takes, I have to go king takes. That's something I got to keep in mind. Because then if I go rook a, the rook on a8 takes, then my bishop would be hanging because of the knight. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so the knight did move out of the way. Fascinating. I think that this is a mistake from my opponent. Let's take. And let's see, maybe I'm wrong. But this looks like a mistake from my opponent. So hopefully in an ideal world he goes here, and then I can force a rook trade by going bishop f5. I don't think he'll fall for that. I wonder what the best move is for white. Probably activating your rook and going on to like maybe it's actually rook rook e1 because then my bishop is paralyzed. That might be the case. But I definitely think you have to drop this pawn. So that is what he plays. We are gonna take the pawn. Unless if there's any way for him to pressure my bishop. I don't see one. So we'll go here. We'll take. He has to move his bishop first, right? That is one thing that's clear. He's going to have to move his bishop first. I can try to start pushing this pawn on c5, c4, and maybe even higher. It'll take him at least, well, first of all, 1, 2, 3 moves to attack my bishop. And in those 3 moves, I can go rook a2, rook a8. And I only need 2 moves to defend my rook on e8. So I'll be able to move my bishop out of the way afterwards. I could also look at something like bishop d5 as a move. If the pawn ever ends on f5, I can look at bishop d5 as a move because after rook takes, then I can maybe even take this pawn and attack the king. So that's a possibility. There's possibilities to think about. I think the preferred option. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting move. I'm gonna just go here. He's just trying to take my rook. I'm not gonna let that happen, obviously. Maybe it's better to actually go first, like this, rook a2, so then it only takes 1 move to come all the way back to a8, and I can free my bishop. So perhaps that's an option. And now we're gonna start pushing this pawn. Should I push this pawn instead? Yeah, let's go with this pawn instead. I'm trying to think which one should I go for. I think it makes more sense to push the c pawn just because it's already supported by my bishop right now. So let's try that. I gotta watch out for f4, f5 as an option. Okay, that's a good move. He's taking a pawn, and we can trade. But the thing is, I think I'm just better in this endgame though, because after takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, it's gonna be really hard to stop my pawns. So let's try this. I'm up a pawn, by the way, just a heads up. And I mean, he's gonna win a pawn back, but I don't think that's the priority. I think the priority is gonna be stopping this one. So let's go here. He's gonna win my pawn on b7 if he wants. I don't even know if he wants to. He does. I'm gonna bring my king into the effort of pushing these pawns forward. Because these pawns are significantly slower, they're far behind. He can go after this pawn. I don't think it's the best idea, because he won't be able to stop this in time. At least I don't think he will. Should I boom my king forward? Push here, push. There's king here, which is a little annoying. But maybe I can just go push here, push, king here, and then afterwards I push this pawn all the way. I think that's going to be the game plan. And together these pawns are going to be really, really hard to stop, and I don't think his 3 pawns are fast enough to stop them. So, like I said, game plan, push. He's down to 2 minutes. I only need 3 moves, 4, 5 moves to promote. And he definitely needs way more than that. So, going here. Okay. Wait, does he need 1, 2, 3, 4? 4 moves to promote. Interesting. Interesting. Huh, this is not easy. This way, and maybe I have to go out? We'll stick with this idea. Because ultimately, he won't be able to promote this pawn, at least not fast enough. And if he ever tries to take this pawn over here, then I can promote. So these pawns are completely safe. There's no way to get them with the rook, without losing the rook at least. And I think I'm playing this endgame at a very high level. We'll see. We'll take a look at what the engine says. But from what I can tell, I think it's going well. Bars. I don't know if you guys know this, by the way. I'm a freestyle rapper too. I don't think I've ever mentioned it in any of these videos. I also freestyle rap on stream. I'm probably going to start doing it on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels on a separate channel. So keep an eye out for that. And also thinking of making chess raps as well. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. Because I have some fun ideas, I think. It's very likely, at least it's looking likely, my opponent will resign here. I don't really see a way for them to come back from this. Just because the only way to hold on to this pawn on h7 after going rook h8 would be by going king c7. Okay. What's the idea here? I'm going to go king d4. Try to help these pawns promote. If he goes rook h5, I'm just going to go rook h8. So I'm going rook h8. We're not going to trade the rooks, obviously. Don't want to lose the game. We trade the rooks. That would mean that my opponent has a queen. And now we can also just go b6 right away. We can also just take the pawn. We're spoiled for choice here. We'll take the pawn, get rid of any counterplay. We'll go b2. And yeah, my opponent's going to run out of checks eventually, right now. And a win. Looks like it's on the cards. There's no way to stop me from queening. I'm up by 3 minutes. It looks like it's going to be a W, ladies and gentlemen. That's 3 wins in a row. We beat a 1674. I think that's the highest win of the day. And look at that. 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, 0 misses. Folks, let's take a look at the analysis. We're 1633, almost at my rapid peak of 1640, which I hit a few weeks ago. So let's take a look at how the game went in the analysis. All right, well, it is analysis time. Let's take a look at this game. It was quite the game, quite the close one. We got e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and d4, which is the Scotch opening, and more specifically the Scotch Gambit, not taking this pawn back on d4. And here I played this h6 move, which the engine doesn't like. Apparently, in order to preserve equality, bishop b4, knight f6, or bishop c5 should be played. So essentially developing another piece and not falling behind on development. I'm curious about knight f6, because knight f6, to my eye, didn't look so great after e5. Apparently, you have the move knight e4 in this case, which is fine, among other moves. Knight e4, knight g4, or even d5. d5, I'm more familiar with this idea, where if pawn takes, and I think black is actually better, just because even though, you know, white makes more progress and takes another pawn, black takes back, and because it was a gambit in the opening, black is just simply better. Here, I didn't like that move, but in the future, I'll know knight f6 is a perfectly reasonable move. Here I played h6 with the idea to prevent any moves to g5, whether it be the knight or the bishop. And the engine doesn't really approve, but at the same time, it's not a terrible move. And white has to play accurately in order to take advantage. White castles, and then I play bishop c5, trying to hold on to the pawn. And apparently c3 is simply just better for white, and white finds that, and the reason is what we find out very soon. After taking, bishop takes on f7 check, and a really, really nice idea. My opponent clearly knew the theory here in the Scotch Gambit. And after taking back, the queen checks on d5 and takes the bishop. The engine likes taking the bishop right away on c5. Here, the extra check is pretty harmless, although I went with the wrong move by going king e7, although it's pretty hard to find out exactly why. My opponent has to find knight e5. And what's the idea behind knight e5? Well, let's find out. After knight e5, if knight takes on e5, queen takes on e5, king f7, and now queen d5 check. King back to e8, and now the queen takes on c5. And the king is in the open. The pressure from this pawn on the e-file is pretty big, and also you're threatening to win this pawn back. If I take on b2, this bishop is going to be very, very, very strong on b2. So a lot of reasons why this, sequence of checks is better for white. But, I mean, it's all the same, and white is simply just better with what was played as well. Here I found d6, which was the only move to be able to cut down on the advantage a little bit. And after white takes the pawn on c3, we are back to equal material. And here I find the right sequence of moves after knight f6. And my opponent makes one mistake, one small misstep with e5, and loses all their advantage because now pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes. After queen takes, I find a nice little square on f7, and playing c6 first before going rook e8, not allowing the queen to take on c7, and then on the next move going rook e8. And now it's just an equal game because my king is safe. Funnily enough, even though the f-pawn is gone, even though my king can't castle, I've almost manually castled in a way. After the queen moves to a different square, I go queen b6, trying to trade off the queens. And I successfully do that. And now we're in a fully equal endgame where I may be slightly worse because of my doubled pawns, but my pieces look pretty strong, and my pawns are not very vulnerable at the moment. So here, my opponent tries to trade the rooks. I go bishop e6, eyeing that pawn on a2, and afterwards, the knight steps away from the defense of the pawn on a2, and I realize that, so I take the knight. After rook takes back, I take that pawn and offer a trade of rooks. And here my opponent should have taken the trade, and this is where my opponent collapsed, because you cannot allow me to take that pawn on b2. There is no way to win my bishop, even though lining up the rooks is generally a good idea. In this scenario, you're not able to use that to an immediate benefit, and I will be able to slide my rook back to a8, as you have all seen in the actual game. Here, the bishop tries to eye the pawn on g7, and that is a pretty good way to win a pawn. So, bishop takes pawn on g7, and this is a nice little way to win back one pawn, but I'm already up material. I had 2-pawn advantage, and so after I take the bishop back, rook takes bishop, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. It's essentially a fancy bishop trade where my opponent wins back a pawn, but my pawns are just marching down with no real way to stop them because the king is cut off on the first rank, which is very instructive in terms of playing chess. The idea of cutting off the king with your rooks in the endgame is a very common idea. So I drop the pawn on b7 because that pawn doesn't really matter to me, and I activate my king, which is the best move in the position, going king e5, realizing that my king is going to be able to help these pawns promote, and now I'm pushing the c-pawn forward, and I'm pushing the c-pawn forward, and guess what? I'm pushing the c-pawn forward, and now with the b-pawn supporting the c-pawn, I am able to move my rook back to a8, which was the whole idea in the first place, and stop any threat of promotion. My opponent tried a last-ditch resource of trying to offer a rook trade. Obviously, you do not... rook sack. Obviously, you do not take the rook, because if you take the rook, then promotion, pawn h8... I can't speak English. Pawn h8 is played, promoting to a queen with check. That is obviously not something you want to allow, so rook h8 is played, winning the pawn with check. going B2, and now there's not much left to be done. You cannot stop either pawn, actually. You cannot stop either pawn from queening. And that is GG's. So a very, very solid game by me. Looking at the game review, I actually played this game with a, wait for it, 92.3% accuracy. That is back-to-back, I believe, 90+% games for me. Actually, no, not back-to-back. I played a 97% accuracy game. The last game I played was a tough one, where I was able to manage a miraculous comeback. And this one is just a very, very solid, well-played game, with slight mistakes early on, but just the best moves being played as soon as my opponent made one error. And that is a win! We are now at 1633 elo, which is kind of wild to believe. We're very, very well on the way to reaching 1700 by the end of the month, which was my goal for the month of October. Do you guys think I'll make it? Let me know in the comments. Also, definitely let me know how long you think it's going to take for me to get to 2000 elo. I'm hopeful that it's something that I can do by halfway through next year, so by mid-summer 2025. I don't know if that's realistic though, because I know other people who've gone on this journey and it's taken more than a year. So we will see. We will see. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a lovely day. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.